I'm just a rider. I'm just a rider.
Welcome to the Old Fashioned Three. They've been around basketball from the Big Dipper to the Greek Freak, from Russell Celtics to Curry's Warriors, from Peach Baskets to Paolo Banchero. Here are Whitey Gleason, Phantom, and Jerry Reynolds.
Yes, that was that cat, all right.
I got a question.
Okay.
What the hell is going on? Can I just start with
I
that?
have no idea. No idea.
Last night, we had 133 points the Kings scored, right? They beat the Grizzlies by 33. By the way, there was no Mr. Minus for the Kings. They had nobody with a negative plus minus. So there was no Mr. Minus for them. But anyway.
Great stat then, yeah.
133 for them. Great. They're a
Super.
Excellent offensive team. You look at the other scores from last night. You had San Antonio scored 127 and lost by 20. Lost by 20. To Portland.
The Trailblazers, sure, 147.
Detroit at home scored 130 points and lost by 20 to the Bucks.
Who scored 150, I believe. Yes.
What is going on, Jer?
There is no defense.
There is no defense.
There is no defense.
The defense rests.
The defense rests, and I'm not sure you're allowed to. I mean, really, it kind of, to me, reminds me of what's happened in the NFL. You know, where every quarterback that's pretty much average, those are 4 to 5,000 yards a year.
Threw for 3,500 yards. Cut him.
Yeah, get rid of him. He sucks.
Yeah, you got to have, if you're a wide receiver, you got to, 100 catches. And those things never used to happen. Well, why are they happening? Well, they're not allowed to. Defense doesn't have the same it's been legislated out, and I understand it to a point because average fan likes the offense.
They want to see people put the ball in the basket.
I'm not, complaining about it. I saw last night, reacting to it. It's like, what in the world is happening?
Yeah, and I think the Bucks had 83 or 84 in the first half. And the Kings had, 47 or 49 in the first quarter. So, the Bucks, if they didn't get the big lead, they would have scored 170 points last night. They got everybody back finally. But, it's just they're just putting up incredible numbers. And like we said, the Kings, what did they have, 12 threes in the first quarter.
9 or 10 straight.
10 straight. So,
10 straight.
Yeah. And you can't count on that to keep going, Jerry. I don't think.
I don't believe you could count on 10 layups in layup drill.
I've seen some of the guys you coached, and I don't think they could make 10 layups in a row.
Yeah, it was amazing shooting display.
So it's not all the rules then.
No, right? No. I think the players, certainly with the 3-point shot, obviously, it's such a
mathematically,
part of it. It's such a part of the game. That's players spend most of their time shooting it and looking for it and everything else. So that's part of it. But I still think too, in the way the game's called. Used to be, as a dribbler, you couldn't just dribble toward the basket and the defender kind of bump you, or you bump the defender actually, because it's a foul on him. Mm-hmm. He hadn't done anything. He's just.
It depends who you are too. That's
and of course if you're a known star, you always get it. And if you're not, you still mostly get it.
I was reminded last night of a game I think you coached, and it would have been about 89, spring of 89, and your Kings. I met Ricky Berry, Del Negro, Harold. You made a ton of threes. I don't remember the number, but it was at that time it was a lot.
Was it 17?
It was the record.
17, wasn't it?
No,
it
was 12. Woo! 12 or no, it's 14
for the game.
For the game.
I was probably at that.
I remember
game,
that game,
and I still don't remember.
You were 14.
Yes, I was
14 for the game. And that broke the record of the Knicks had established with Rick Pitino at 12. And I always said, there's one of the things like we were
the record never going to be broken.
Well,
12.
No, yeah.
Well, nobody's ever going to get more than 12.
But it kind of goes into what we were talking about last week about certain areas get more attention. Well, that 12 they made in New York, it was a daily story. we make 14 and just
well, nobody knew about it till a week later. Oh, Sacramento played. Okay, great. Yeah,
that record don't count.
That record doesn't count.
It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
now.
the New York record still stands.
The New York record is still the record.
That's the record, yeah.
By the way, speaking of shooting and teams you coached, I ran across this yesterday. It's neither here nor there. I'm just curious, though, if you remember this. It was 88, November of 88. So that was your team, right? Yeah, 88, 89?
I think so.
Yeah, he doesn't know yet.
Sure. Because Ricky Berry was on the team. So
yeah.
And one of your players in a game against Utah, a loss, was 0 for 15.
Yeah.
Which is when you look at the worst games ever. It's not the worst, but it's up there.
Rodney McRae.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
And that's your best guy.
Oh, he's a heck of a player. And, and as what would have it, I felt obligated to make fun of him. And,
that's
that's hard to do.
You know how to handle people. There's no doubt about that. So how did you broach that subject to Rodney?
I just said, Rodney, we're going to try to get you some shots early in the next one to see if you can continue this record.
Keep the streak going.
And of course he was good the next game, and but because he's a good player, but he was terrible that night. Just couldn't make anything. That's as we all know, that's the way it is.
I think the record, Tim Hardaway was 0 for 18 or 19 in one game once. But looking that up and shooting and everything,
well,
he's a
Hall of Famer, so there you go.
That's like the Houston game where they 0 for 27. Mm-hmm. In the NBA final or Western Finals. Right. That's a team that was basically based on making threes.
Yeah, they didn't make any.
And they didn't make any.
Stretch, in that rather long stretch, yes.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's
the NBA, and that's why it's fantastic.
It is fantastic, and the Kings are fantastic. And to me, what was in some ways more impressive than the shooting was amazing, but the shooting's going to come, shooting's going to go. But the balanced attack last night, you look at how many guys took, Barnes had 10 attempts and 11 for Murray, and Sabonis had 13 and 14 for Fox and 11 for Lyles. And it was such a balanced attack when you got a lot of guys shooting well and they're sharing the ball like that. It's hard to guard.
It is if they're good. I mean, that's not hard to guard if they're not any good.
You can take as many shots as you want if you don't make them.
Well, I recognize that.
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, I thought too. I mean that the bench was really why the Kings won.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Trey Lyles was terrific.
Yeah.
Malik Monk was Malik Monk again.
Finally, yeah.
Been off for a while.
Yeah, that was a key one. Yeah.
And, Davion does what Davion does, and I thought Rashawn Holmes was efficient. But the bench had been. I thought a key early in the year when they got off to the great start, and then you're starting to count on it, and then all of a sudden, there's a bunch of games there you couldn't.
Yeah, and part of that's Malik Monk because he's been off for a while. He's your scorer basically off the bench.
So, him back, it makes a lot of difference. And, of course, like I say, to me, Trey Lyles is a guy who, if you give him extended minutes, most nights he's going to give you.
He's a confident shooter, isn't he, right now?
Yeah, he is, isn't
he? Yeah.
He should be.
That'll happen when you make him.
Yeah. The thing about Rashawn Holmes, and I like him a lot, it's great that he's playing more. It seems like every time he goes underneath and he gets tangled up with somebody, which is a lot, it takes him 5 minutes to get his glasses adjusted. And it's almost like Phantom in his glasses situation today.
That's right, because I was under the basket with Rashawn Holmes last night.
Who fouled you there?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was the vacuum cleaner, but I'll get into that later.
Well, really?
I put it together. I think it looks pretty good. As long as Jerry doesn't mind the side, I think it's a pretty good look, really.
No, I've had that look, but I mean...
I'm sure they had to deal with when Lou Alcindor had his goggles. I'm sure he had to deal with this. Yeah,
really,
Worthy.
The way to make that balance up, make you feel better, get rid of one of your ears.
I don't know. They're pretty heavy these days, Jerry. I don't know.
You want to Van Gogh that way?
Yeah.
You certainly can.
It worked for him.
Paint me a picture, okay? Yeah.
The cool thing is, I don't think anybody would have known if I.
No. Thanks for pointing it out, though. That's good.
I had to point that out.
That's good. Yeah. For whatever reason, I'm a contributing member of the show. Okay.
It could be worse. One time I was at a Kings event, and I had like a briefcase or something, and I pulled some glasses out that I hadn't worn in a while, and so I put them on, and it's like I'm walking down to wherever it was, like a fan event or the draft or something, and people are like kind of looking at me funny, and I'm like, what's wrong with them? So I'm driving home. It's like, something's wrong. I can't see out of one eye. I only had the lens in one side.
Yes. So how many times have I done that?
The lens had popped out. I was wearing glasses.
How long did you have to drive to figure that out?
How long were you at the place until you got to the car and you went through the entire event, right?
More than half an hour. I mean,
yeah, I don't know, Jerry.
I was like Mr. Peanut.
I know.
Jerry with
Mr. Magoo is what you were, yeah.
Oh, Magoo, you've done it again.
Oh, Magoo.
See, people like this are a danger to society.
He is, and he didn't even own up to it. I would have gone straight to the police. I'm sorry.
I just owned up to it. Well, you want me to turn myself
now you
in?
did. Yeah, that's years ago. Statute of limitations is
I
right now.
guess, although maybe a pistol whip would be in order still.
I think so, yeah. Absolutely.
Didn't want to make a spectacle of myself, that's all.
Well, that's too late for that.
Yeah.
You're about 30 years too late on that front.
Here's the thing.
Here's the thing. Here we go.
Here's the thing. You compare right now what the Kings are doing to what the Warriors are doing. And they're similar offenses, right?
Right.
Mike Brown has brought a similar offense. The Warriors right now, getting back to the Kings and the balanced attack, if you're sharing the ball, I know this is an oversimplification, but if you're moving the ball, player movement, ball movement, as Saint always says, the ball is going to find the guy who poses at any given moment the biggest threat to the defense. That's the idea. And I know it depends on who it is, but in general, move the ball.
All right, I see what you're saying.
And the Kings are doing that, and the Warriors right now you got like Clay forcing shots, which is the opposite.
Right.
You even got Steph.
Right.
We're struggling here. I got to take. He's taking bad shots. Jordan Poole has a habit of forcing things, and it's the Kings right now are playing a more Warrior-like style than the Warriors are.
Yeah, they are, and I've thought about that. It seems to me like. Besides obviously the Warriors got some guys still trying to find themselves, but everything you say is true, and to me it goes back to kind of Sabonis is the Draymond Green for the Kings, and right now he's way better at what he does than Draymond is.
Great point.
And so you're basically he's not creating any kind of a threat offensively, Draymond, and so it's harder for those other guys. for him to be as effective.
Oh, they give Draymond and he's a good passer, but they give him so much space now.
Yeah, so it's they're anticipating the pass. We want you to shoot, and I to me that's the oversimplified version of it, but I really think that's a real huge difference in how they're playing.
Well, what Whitey said is like you want to get the ball around and eventually it'll hit the guy that's the best chance of making the shot. But in the Kings situation now, they basically have 4 or 5 guys who have a kind of an equal way chance to make
a good
shot,
and that's what you want to do. That's a good shot.
I remember in the old days of coaching, before I met Jerry, so this was my own philosophy. I told
Did the ball
kids,
have laces?
I told the kids, no, we got rid of those a week or two before. I said we keep passing the ball. The basis of basketball is you pass the ball around until you get the guy with the best shot. Now, when you're talking about widely varying abilities, sometimes that's not always the case. But in this case, for the Kings, they're able to do that, and almost everybody who has an open shot has an equal chance of making it. And that's obviously what you really want to have. And that's not true, as we just talked about with the Warriors. Draymond, you don't ever want him to have the ball to shoot it. You want him to pass it, but with everybody sagging off, it's harder for him to find lanes. But the Kings are in that situation now where it's like, as long as we move the ball, whoever ends up with the ball at an open shot will knock it down, and that's a fantastic place to be.
Yeah, they got more guys, and I think too the fact that Sabonis is more of a threat to score. He wasn't very efficient last night, but I mean, so he's played pretty tight, and that opens up the screen assist, for guys, like Herter, who gets a couple of baskets a game just by a little drop-off pass. They're not going to leave Sabonis as much as they would Draymond. So you got some open looks that just wouldn't be there for the Warriors.
Well, don't tell him I said this, please. But, last week he was starting to dream these fanciful dreams of the Kings, and why not the Kings?
Yeah, why not?
And we were saying, well, they don't guard anybody. But looking at those numbers like we mentioned from last night, you got 150 to 130, 147 to 127. I don't know, Jared. Maybe it doesn't matter as much this year.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter as much. I mean,
please don't tell him I said that.
No. Well, he's saying maybe he was right. Is what he's saying.
No,
I didn't go that far.
Maybe he was right.
No, this is what's really scary. He's partially right.
That is scary. Even I, and it's me, and I think that's scary.
No, the best. I mean,
it's like knock at the cabin scary or whatever.
I mean, you can be a terrific defensive team, which the Grizzlies have been. But they didn't look like it last night because, of course, you didn't have a couple of players.
That tends to help.
But, I mean, John Morant's not like a stopper. Now, Adams is.
He gobbles up the boards,
but, I mean, the point remains, I mean, that all of a sudden they were basically winning the game until they weren't. And then it became just a mass butt kicking, and just because of shot making and the fact that you
could say ass on the podcast.
You could say we don't recommend it, but you can say it.
Say it, okay.
But if you're not going to play defense, it's nice if the other team doesn't have their best player.
When should I say ass? I mean,
well, you just said in a perfect spot right there. I think
spot. That works.
Yeah. I mean,
score it.
You can put it in anywhere you want, anywhere you feel that it works. Go ahead and put it in there.
Harrison Barnes did an interview with Anthony Slater in the Athletic today, and he was saying that though. He's like, well, come playoff time, and he's a guy that's been through finals.
What do we know about come playoff time? What does that matter to Kings fans?
Well, he knows.
Well, he does.
He knows.
Fine.
But
he was on the Warriors then.
Yeah. But how realistic is that? One thing they have to do, it seems to me, is rebound. They have to rebound. Well, they did last night.
Yeah.
But obviously, defensively, if you take care of your own backboards, that helps your defense a lot.
No
and they've done that well this year.
And Keegan Murray is getting so much better on the board. And I think that is really can't be.
I'm looking this up because there was something that I wanted to. Jerry, please, you're exactly right.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean, there's certainly a little more attention to there that Sabonis doesn't have to get every board, and a lot of times, I mean, Keegan's a more lively jumper anyway. And so he's getting 5 or 6 more than he had been getting, if not more. So I think that's a big part. But I agree. I think the other thing is when you get what maybe Harrison knows that the rest of these guys, and certainly Domas does because he's been in a lot of playoff series, but is that when you get to playoffs, yes, offense is still, it's going to get tougher. It's going to get tougher to score. I mean, the playoffs are like the last 6 minutes of regular season games, where the
it doesn't flow like it does in a regular season game.
And officials let things go like they do in the last 6 minutes. It gets more physical.
So it's more of a half court.
The game gets a little harder, a little slower. More timeouts are called, more defensive adjustments are made. All that happens, and then playoffs, ball goes up. That's happening right then.
See, that gets back to what I was saying to you last week. Why not the Kings? Well,
why not the Kings?
But I think a team has to go through some of that. You have to experience it.
True, but this is a season unlike any other season.
That's true.
Mm-hmm. And the one thing I was looking, I apologize for looking at your stats without permission.
Not accepted.
The one thing that I don't like as a man who's now going all offensive is 24 turnovers last night.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes
25 total turnovers.
Sometimes the pace of play adds into that, but they haven't been doing that in the past, and that's because if you're going to score, base it on your scoring, you need to kind of take better care of the ball.
Who had most of the turnovers last night for the Kings?
Both the key guys, Sabonis and Fox, were just as sloppy as you could be. I thought them, but then again, in a way, the way I'd look at it in some way is they won easily with their two main ball handlers and guys making assists. Also, were the guilty of the most turnovers, and you still won.
Right, but you can't discard that.
Oh, no, and you can't count on that.
Right.
But because they got bailed out, in my mind, by, the Harrison Barnes, Keegan Murrays, and the bench, who had outstanding games in all ways. But they didn't. I thought that was probably Sabonis. Triple-double, probably his worst game since he's been a King.
If I may say, you were not overly impressed with them against Philly either. I remember I talked
to
him.
I mean, he's turning down too many shots. When you get into the paint, he's looking to kick out. It's almost a better version of Ben Simmons. But when you get in 2 or 3 feet, you need to be thinking about a little.
So
short
he's doing
hooks.
A little too much. Let's get it to everybody else. Yeah.
To me, he's unselfish to a fault. I mean, you love the unselfishness, but his teammates would be encouraging him to take those shots.
Take the shot.
8 turnovers for Sabonis and 6 for De'Aaron Fox last night. But, hey, 37 assists. 37.
Yeah, but still your ratio isn't all that good. And if they played a team that had a all-star starter in the backcourt, that would have been made it a lot closer. I don't think it would have been a 33-point difference. But, yeah, maybe you do. Maybe you go, okay, we had 25 turnovers, but it's in a game we can afford 25 turnovers. Next game we may not be able to afford 25 turnovers.
Yeah, that's what you hope for. I've said all along, I mean, when this team makes threes, their bench is productive, they take care of the ball. That's their formula for winning consistently.
I would add Whitey's rebounds in there too. That's the fourth part of this.
And in general, if you're doing some of that, especially by making threes, your rebounding gets better too because you get to play 5-on-5.
Yeah.
Now, what happened to the Warriors last night? After the 49ers took care of the Cowboys, the Warriors wrapped things up against the Nets, and they had, a 12-point lead at home with about 6 minutes to go, playing a Nets team that had no Kevin Durant. He wasn't there.
He wasn't even there, was it? Kyrie seems to be playing rather well these days.
And the Nets came all the way back and won.
Well, yeah, I think that's a case of who's the best player on the floor. Well, it's Kyrie Irving. I mean, he made shots.
And we don't think it should be, but it was.
But it was.
Yeah.
And he made not just shots, but plays. And then you had Seth Curry and Joe Harris making threes. Well, of course, they got some good threes to look at. And so much of it because of Kyrie was doing.
Now, why shouldn't it be Kyrie? I mean,
Well, it should be Steph Curry if you're at home. And that goes back, I think it was the Boston game watching the last quarter when they lost to Boston. I mean, he had a couple of turnovers and missed a bunch of shots, and he didn't play very well at the end of the game. And I don't know if that's happened in every game since then, but it just was – I'm watching this going, wait a minute, that's Steph Curry, and he's made like 2 or 3 turnovers and had a couple of pretty good looks and didn't make them. And you're not going to make all the shots, but it's Steph Curry. So he's not doing what he needs to be doing, and we – come to just take him for granted as far as at the end of the game, especially at home, he's going to be able to lock him out, and he just didn't do it in that game. And now you're talking about, against the Nets, and the same scenario happens.
I mentioned to Jer on the way over, you've mentioned the punch. You talk about the punch a lot whenever we talk about what's wrong with the Warriors. You say, well, one of their guys punched the other guy.
I did mention
So you got that. You got Draymond talking about the writings on the wall because he could opt out. You got Wiseman. What's his future? Is he any good? Did they trade him? You got all that going on, the salary crunch and 2 timelines. But put all that aside, too many times this year for the Warriors, and that was one example. Both those games were examples. They've had winnable games Fourth quarter, they've had leads, and their best players have not been able to execute. That has nothing to do with any of the other stuff. Yeah, and that has happened. It's the first time it's happened at home, but it's like the 8th time this year. So there's more going on there than just, it's, they have to figure some things out. If your best players aren't performing down the stretch, guys with the championship pedigree, something is fundamentally off.
Well, too, look at their road record. It's awful. Now, as any Warrior fans are thinking, well, they're going to get it together, and I'm one that thinks they will. But I mean, they are playing on the road at a level of the Houstons and the San Antonios. And I mean, at some point, you can't be a good team if you can't do better than that on the road. And the only really good road win they've had is when none of the main guys played.
That was weird.
And so I believe it's a conundrum is what I'm saying.
I believe you're correct with your conundrum, sir. Yes.
Well, you're right. And remember the game against the Jazz when Poole and Clay turned the ball over at the end, and they had a chance to beat Orlando early in the year, and they gacked a lead there in the Boston game. And it's happened a lot where some of those games have been winnable, and for whatever reason, they have not been able to execute down the stretch, which was what that team and those guys are supposed to be able to do.
Well, they've been able to do it, and that's why you if you're a Warrior fan, you have hope because you've seen it for years and years and years, and you're assuming, Clay's going to get back closer to Clay. Wiggins is going to get back to being what he was last year.
You didn't play him in the fourth quarter.
And
Nets,
I mean, Draymond is slipping, but there's still a player there, and of course Steph Curry's most valuable player type candidate.
Absolutely.
So can they do it? Yes, they can. But at some point, time's running out. It's also true. Look at the standings.
There's a lot of teams between you and where you want to be.
Yeah,
not so
you. They're. I mean, to say they're a lot like the Lakers, they are. I mean, I'd have to say, from the Lakers' point of view, with the recent trade of Hachimura,
that's a good trade.
And if Davis comes back and stays healthy, which we know ain't gonna happen.
I don't like it.
But
gives them a pretty good front line. Yeah.
I mean, you say, well, that's a team that can move into the top 8, maybe more so than the Warriors.
They didn't have to give up much to get Rui Hachimura either.
No.
Some second-round picks. You figure, are any of those second-round picks likely to be as good as him? Probably not. So that's a good deal.
Don't forget Kendrick Nunn. Now that was former lottery.
It's kind of easy to do, Jared. Yeah, I think that's
former lottery pick. Top 5 pick.
He can shoot, but wouldn't quite fit.
Yeah, I think he'll play a little bit, but my guess is he's not as good as Delon Wright they have there now as a player. But you're right. I mean, I think Hachimura, when I saw it, I said, "Oops, I don't like this."
You don't like when Lakers make good moves.
I don't.
No, you do not.
You
don't expect it either.
No.
Heebie-jeebies. Like,
wait a minute. That was a good idea. I thought. Do you think the Kings, did they have any interest in Hachimura to be that guy that you've been talking about all year?
I would have hoped so.
Yeah.
I mean, really, I thought he's a kind of guy that could have fit.
The price tag wasn't exorbitant. Yeah.
I don't know that what player they would have put in the deal, type thing, but. Anyway, he's got a chance to make them better. That's for sure.
That's all we need. That's all we need.
That's all he needs. He doesn't need that.
Lakers making things uncomfortable for either of the Northern California teams.
Oh, I know. No, it's just not right, and so we can always figure that and they have the ability to screw something up. Going forward.
Yeah.
I mean, at some point, maybe Westbrook demand starting and that sort of thing, who knows?
Speaking of trades, just heard about this today. Mark Stein apparently wrote about this. The Suns are saying that they are evaluating Chris Paul's role going forward. So it looks like maybe, which is kind of like, wait, we didn't know we were going to be, as they said on NBA radio, we're having that conversation. Now, according to this report, the Suns are looking at some guys that maybe would be replacements for Chris Paul, Rozier, Van Vliet, and a guy we talked about last week, Emmanuel Quickley. Now, I don't know if anything is coming of any of this, but how about that all of a sudden when you think maybe the Suns get it together, make another run, and they're talking about tearing this thing down or at least removing the guy who makes it go?
He just came back, right? He just came back, and then they beat Memphis the other night, right? So, yeah.
Who doesn't beat Memphis?
Are they going to start owing him a lot of money? He's going to owe him a lot. They're going to owe him a lot of money is the reason they come up with that.
Maybe that's, maybe he's here this year and they're talking about beyond, or maybe they're trying to send a message to him. I don't know, but it surprised me a little bit.
Those people you mentioned don't really seem to be the next Chris Paul. I don't see them ascending to that level. Even next year, I don't see them ascending to that level. Fred VanVleet is as good as he's ever going to get, and probably on the other side, I think. So is that a warning shot across the bow to Chris Paul and his peeps that we're looking at something else?
Yeah, if that's come from them. But I'm with you. I mean, Emmanuel Quickley is the one I like the best of that three.
Oh, yeah.
And is he the next Chris Paul? Well, not in this lifetime.
No, not in this lifetime.
Is he that much better than Cam Payne? I don't know. I mean, I like him, but
I don't know that he is.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, it's to me you'd have a. Well, anyway,
Cam Payne, I just got it. Huh?
Campaign,
I never
he
thought of it.
Never thought of it. He's on fire today, but he got his best one. He didn't even know he did.
So Chris Paul's out. You can't rely on him though. He's always getting hurt. I think they would have beaten the Bucks a few years ago if he hadn't broken his wrist or whatever happened, and he's just always getting hurt.
Yeah, it's obviously, and at this age, and now his contract, so it's type thing, and it's pretty clear is. They had a lot of success with Paul being their main guy, like he's been everywhere he's been.
Yeah, he tends to help teams win.
And he's led teams to their most success they've ever had, sort of thing. But it's also true, Devin Booker is the main guy now. And that's clear as, to me, that's just clear.
Right. But you got to have a guy to distribute, too, because Devin Booker's not that guy.
Do you have to have maybe
a really expensive guy?
Guy on the downslide.
Yeah.
That's why I wouldn't be interested if I were them in Fred VanVleet, because he's a pop gun too, but he's not as good as Booker.
He doesn't run an offense anything close to Chris Paul.
Certainly Quickley seems to make more sense in that.
Yeah.
To me, there's a team, if they could get somebody like Tyus Jones from Memphis, that guy is a terrific, probably is a top 10 or 12 point guard in the league. He just has to play behind John Morant.
Tyus Jones or Tyus Edney, Phantom? Which way are you going?
I got to go with Jones. I don't think Edney's ever been. Although his foray to the basket in the NCAA tournament was fantastic, but I don't think he's ever been in the top dozen point guards in the league like Jerry just anointed.
Played on a playoff team, but started on a playoff team. That's for sure. And but that
good
was
player, good little player,
good little got a lot of mileage out of his abilities.
Yes. We were talking about the Lakers, unfortunately, a moment ago. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to walk back a little bit of what I said last week when we were doing our Players A to Z. We're not doing that yet, but last week we did R, and I mentioned Pat Riley, the great Pat Riley, and I said some disparaging things about his ego, which may or may not be true. But I want to walk that back because Pat Riley just did an interview with ESPN or somebody, and he was talking about Kareem. And because, Kareem's going to be eclipsed now by LeBron for the scoring record. And Pat Riley said, Kareem's the best player ever. And I just applaud him for that because I think we have talked about that. I don't think Kareem ever gets quite the recognition he should as far as being the best ever. You make a strong case. No one ever says that about him. I think there was even a few years ago they had ESPN they announced who was the best college player ever, and they didn't mention him, and it's like that's just ridiculous. But I just appreciate, and obviously Pat Riley coached him, so maybe a little biased, but this is a good time for Pat Riley to let people know, this guy, LeBron's going to break his record, but he's the greatest player of all time. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, and had the you mentioned, I thought I read the same thing, where he still had the unguardable shot. And it's when you needed a basket, that's where you went, and nobody was as proficient as him. And that's true.
Yeah, and he was so much more than that too, especially younger. But especially in his college days and early in the pros.
But what little experience I had, coaching against him, it was impossible. You just knew when things broke down by the Lakers, when the rare occurrences that you could guard him a little bit. They'd just hold up 5, and that meant going to Cap.
Yeah.
And it's like, thank you.
You didn't tell, hey, it's going to Kareem. Come on, guys.
Yeah, didn't matter. The great thing about it is people.
They didn't hide it. It wasn't like we're trying to get signals here. Over here. All that is like 5.
And you see highlights of him, and a couple, I think it was like his 30,000 point or something, and they show him baseline hook, and it's like 17 feet.
Yeah.
And it's people don't understand. It wasn't like he dropped the ball in the basket.
It wasn't like
it's
Wilt.
Like, you get your kids in there watching and go, wait a minute, that's 15 feet away, and he's got a hook shot. That's not an easy shot to shoot from that far away, and a baseline 17-foot hook. And they thought, like you said, they held up 5. They wanted that shot. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy to go. Let's work it in for a 17-foot baseline hook shot.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Yeah, the Pat, talking about his ego. Well, I think he's kind of egotistical, but I liked him, and I certainly respect him. I think that's one of the things that makes him Pat Riley. He became Pat Riley. He wasn't always this Pat Riley. I mean, he was a former
there's a couple of different Pat Rileys,
Yeah, there was a whole different transition there from, high school All-American days at Schenectady, New York, lower middle-class family and all that stuff. I mean, being a reserve on the Lakers and this, that, and the other. And when he was assistant coach, he was Cool Breeze McGurk,
I loved him as Cool Breeze McGurk. Oh, it was a great show.
It's different being an assistant and then being a head coach.
Yeah, and then, kind of going into slick back the Pat Riley we know and love,
I think one of my, I don't know if it's my favorite story, the thing that impresses me about Pat Riley, the coach, is a story about 1985 finals. In 84, the Lakers and Celtics played, and the Lakers probably should have won, and they didn't. They lost in 7, and it was a real just gut-wrenching for them because they knew they were better, but they got beaten. That was the clothesline, McHale on Rambis and all that. So 85, it's like the Lakers felt like this is our year. Game 1, they got destroyed in Boston. Annihilated the Memorial Day Massacre.
Yeah.
And then legend has it on the bus, Pat Riley called out Kareem. It's like, you got to show up. This is it. Your back's against the wall, and this is when you've got to do something about it. And he responded that and did, and they went on and won that series in 6.
He was like 38 years old too. At that time.
Won game
young.
2, which just nobody saw that coming.
Nobody. Yeah, after game 1.
Yeah,
and that's why the NBA is fantastic.
Yeah. My favorite Pat Riley story, Jerry, I don't know if you remember
this. Are you still
this.
getting a check from the league or something for that? Or?
No, it just bubbles up now and
Okay,
then.
all right. It's genuine.
My Pat Riley story.
Kind of a Grant Napier memorial kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
It doesn't have the same impact, but I remember the early days of the old Arco Arena, which I went to every game.
The first one?
Yeah, and I don't know if you were the coach at this time, but
you weren't the head coach in the first Arco, were you?
Yeah,
he was.
Building?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
with
Harold.
Not the third year. Of
the third year.
Part, half a year.
So in those days, we didn't have Slamson. This was way before Slamson. So we imported the Phoenix Gorilla. I don't know if you mentioned the Phoenix Gorilla. If you remember that, Jared. And this guy was fantastic. The chicken got all the pub, but the Gorilla was the man.
Was great.
So one time the Lakers came to town, and of course that's all we lived for in those days.
Yeah.
And we had pretty good seats, and the day there wasn't a lot of people there. And at one of the timeouts, the Gorilla comes out, and the Gorilla is dressed in Pat Riley with a suit and everything. He's got his hair slicked back, and everybody's just going crazy. And and so the Gorilla comes out, and he's combing his hair. He's got a 3-piece suit on and everything. And we were behind the Laker bench, and every one of the Lakers, they were in the huddle, and they were all tapping each other, pointing. They were all looking, and they were laughing their asses off. It was so funny just watch him. And Pat Riley is down there trying to tell, and they're all just looking over his head over there to the Gorilla doing the Pat Riley impersonation. It was hysterical. It was one of my favorite memories, that and Larry Bird missing the free throws in that old Arco Arena.
Weren't you out on I'm sorry, but speaking of missed free throws in the old building, weren't you in some contest once when you were on the floor to shoot a free throw?
I was out there a couple of times. One time I shot a 3-pointer, I think. And I was like 4 feet short or something like that because I never shot without a backdrop before. I don't know about you, dear, but in my high school, you had the wall right behind there. I'm out there and I took a shot, and I thought I let it go. I got reaching in the cookie jar, and it never hit iron and everything.
See, when I first heard that story, it was a free throw, and now it's getting longer.
Well, I wanted to make myself feel better in front of Jared, but I didn't want. Yeah, I didn't want. There was another one I made. I made a free throw and a layup and then missed a three-pointer.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
You should have. You should have listened to Gene Hackman's with the measuring and Hoosiers.
Yeah, I never.
Still 10 foot.
Yeah.
So
But I got a gorilla story.
Oh, great!
In fact, I still got.
He was great.
He was
that
great.
gorilla was fantastic.
But he at a game, and this was a couple of games after I'd collapsed, had that little collapse thing.
I was there,
and so he was at. It was at our game, and so he was, because we didn't have our own, we couldn't afford our own.
That's right. We
mascot.
We couldn't get Slamson yet. That was still way in the future.
So we had him, and he came out, and I thought it was hilarious. We had because we took a picture together. He had on a gray wig, popped down, and was holding his heart, and everything, and and then he got. I mean, it's funny because there was a kind of a backlash. Why? That's really insensitive, and I didn't give a shit.
It was great. It was so funny.
Yeah.
It's funny, and I mean,
because he collapsed or something, or he keeled over, or
huh?
Is that what people were upset about?
I think that they were upset that he was, in effect, they think, mocking my
his fall from grace,
which
so to
he
speak.
was, but it was.
It was good-natured gorilla fun.
Good nature, you can't you can't take a joke,
Right. I mean, that's if anyone should mind, that's kind of
if I didn't mind, that's why I looked at it. It's like, well, I don't mind. So.
Yeah.
I always remember every time you're on the broadcast and you'd always go, and somebody would get a technical foul, and you'd say, well, and they're arguing about it, but they're not going to get it rescinded. That never happens. I'm like, no, that's not true, because they gave you a technical foul when you passed out, and they took it back. So you're the one guy that I know can't say that.
I was, the first in history. Blaine Reichel.
I'd never forget that.
And called that on me and rescinded it. I remember Mike Schuler was the coach of Portland at the time, and he was really incensed. I mean, I could have been Leonard dead. He had still been.
He wanted the free throw, baby.
He wanted the free throw.
That was huge.
That's
huge
a coach
point. That was a close game.
It was. Harold Presley.
Hit the three. Yeah, hit the shot.
Hit the shot to win by one, which that was the one. And then about 2 or 3 games later, Schuler was fired. And then a year or so later, Schuler came to be an assistant with Gary St. Jean. I'd always kid him. I said, I went to a lot of trouble to get you fired. I can't. I didn't collapse on anybody else. Just you.
Yeah.
It was
personal. That's the only T I've ever seen get taken away. Gary Reynolds.
Guys, speaking of the old days. There was something that happened before our last episode that we failed to mention, and I think we just need to at least touch on it here.
Okay.
Especially for a show that we talk about the old days and the way basketball used to be. Former coach and player passed away. Chris Ford.
Yeah.
Passed away right before our last episode, and I apologize if it was just. But Chris Ford, of course, former Piston, former Celtic, former coach. He was supposedly the first guy, right, to make a three in NBA history.
In the NBA history, And people forget, too, that the first Celtic championship was Chris Ford and Nate Tiny Archibald were the guards.
The 81?
Wow. 80-81. Yeah. In other words, people always say, Bird, they won 3, but, Parrish and McHale. I said, well, they weren't there in the first one. So how do you explain that? No, it was those
Chris Ford and Tiny Archibald.
And Tiny Archibald were started. Cedric Maxwell at forward.
That's his MVP.
Bird and Cowens was the center.
Chris Ford was a good defensive player, too.
Good defensive player. Coach.
Great coach.
Was a good coach.
I think he coached in the All-Star game once, so he had the best record.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know he was, I know that he was highly respected by most people. And sad, very sad. I mean, obviously, it always gets my attention when they're 4 or 5 years younger than I am.
And they're checking out.
Yeah. Checking out. Yeah.
Supposedly, I was looking this up today. He made a shot in the game. What would that have been? The first game of the 79-80 season? Is that when we had, or 80-81?
They implemented it in 79, I thought.
Okay, yeah. So he made a shot. Opening night, Kevin Greavy of Washington also made a 3 that night, but they ruled that Ford's came first because their game started sooner. But actually, no one is sure what time
in the game.
What time?
Yeah. From what I read, it's like, what time was this?
I never liked Kevin Greavy
like,
anyway.
Well, his game started sooner, and his was in the first quarter. So Chris Ford. Yeah, that's the way they did it. Then.
So let me ask you this: Kevin Greavy, Luke Kennard. Kevin Greavy. Is there any difference?
Oh, any difference? I thought you were going to ask who I.
Kevin Grevey was a fine scorer in his day. Yeah, I mean,
a little tougher guy, wasn't he?
Yeah, he might have implemented the 3 had he been around today. He probably would have had the 3 in his game, so I can see that.
I think
I
Kevin
like
Grevey had a
Luke
ring,
Kennard,
didn't he?
though.
With one of those.
He was a bullet. He was a bullet.
He was I won't say it, but he was a top 7, 8 guy.
Yeah.
You know Jack Merritt.
No Jack Merritt.
No,
come on.
I would go KG there. Being a KG, I think I'd go KG, Kevin Grevey there over Luke
I'm
Kennard.
going to go LK.
I think I would too.
Yeah.
I don't think LK's done yet.
Oh no,
There you go.
Not. Yeah, so he's got time.
He's got time to catch up to KG. And make you all wrong.
Is he still with the Clippers? Is he still?
Yeah, he's hurt.
Yeah,
he's hurt.
He doesn't play a lot.
If he's on the Clippers, then he's hurt. Yeah.
I hate to go here, but since we talk injuries, is there anything that we can add that we haven't already said about, load management? Because you mentioned that Warrior win over the Cavs last Friday, and they sat 4 guys. They sat 4 starters, and they won the game. Okay, they did win the game, but Steve Kerr, he said, "Yeah, I feel bad for the fans. I'm sorry, but we have to do this." And Mitch Lawrence was on NBA on Sirius Radio. He said it was shameful what they did.
Agreed.
And it's just, I don't know. I mean, I understand why teams do it. There's supposed to be rules against doing that on the road, but unless there are special circumstances, but they don't really enforce them. I think that's just where we are now.
Or is there a formula? I mean, like you said, he didn't want to. You sit all 4 guys every third game after the second game.
Well, they had
of a
played in
back-to-back.
Boston the night before.
There's got to be some sort of
They
formula.
played heavy minutes, then they played in Cleveland, then they had to play again Sunday. So they sat Green and Clay and Curry and Wiggins. They all sat, and they won the game, which, again, complicates it.
Yeah.
But I think that's just where we are. Adam Silver last summer talked about we have to do something. I don't see what can be done.
Well, I think there's some things to be done. I don't know if they're going to do them, but as you pointed out, I mean, with Curry, first of all, the original statement, it's just nothing we can do. I feel sorry. Of course there is.
Yeah, there is something you can do. Yeah,
you're the coach. Say you're, at least
you're the one who
our
can
medical
do something.
people, Jer. They say we shouldn't do it.
They don't know.
The medical people don't say that either. They just, I mean, that's anyway. But it's like they're going back to the Pat Riley statement. He had a thought in there too, talking about, how, Jabbar days. It's so different now, where players felt obligated to play every night. Well, that's it in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
They don't feel obligated to play every night.
Yeah. I was doing a show with John Dickinson, the Warriors this week on 95.7 The Game Saturday, and someone called and said, "How did we get here?" And that's it. It's like back then, and maybe it's better. I don't know. But back then, players like, I'm not missing a game. Now players want to miss games, and that's the difference.
That is the difference. And, coaches are, probably a little pushy, maybe not all to the best, but can you go? We really need you. What can you give me tonight? Type things. And, of course, I'll always remember a game that I wasn't coaching, but we were playing the Utah Jazz in Sacramento, and Jerry Sloan and Phil Johnson were good friends. So I'd always go in the locker room. They said, "Come on in. There ain't no secrets here."
Come on in.
And so, but Karl Malone was getting ready to get taped, and his ankle was swollen and green. And I said, "Karl, you gonna play tonight?" He said, "Yeah, I'm gonna kick your ass too."
Yes, I'm gonna stand in one spot, get fouled, and go to the line 20
and that's
times.
what he said, and that's what he did. And they wrapped it up, and I mean, and of course, on that same note, John Stockton that same year had a meniscus tear. 6-8 weeks minimum. He played in 2 weeks. Now, people say whatever they want to say, but that was the difference.
Yes.
And the league needs to get a handle on it some way. And it goes back to Popovich. They didn't really take a stand against Pop when he did all that, and when they should have and could have.
You didn't stop it at the beginning.
They did fine him. Yeah. I mean, I think it was $250,000 they fined him.
Yeah, if they took it out of his pocket, that might have been.
Go to the bank and take it out of his account.
Yes.
By the way, I have a Karl Malone story real quick. I was playing, and you might have been playing, I don't know. We were playing in a game at Arco before the Kings were playing that night, and we were playing like the Firemen, some charity game or something. No one was there, but the players were arriving early. Karl Malone came out, and I remember, looking behind the stanchion, like, there's Karl Malone, and he was watching us for a while, And I'll just say he was not overly impressed.
But, really?
Yeah.
He didn't seem to be overly impressed by the quality of play.
He told us we shouldn't be playing. He's going to play, but we shouldn't.
You ain't going to kick anybody's ass.
No, you should not be on the floor. Please get off the floor right now.
Yeah. Well, I always remember, too, where he jumped on me one time. He's in the locker room, and he was saying, "Yeah, I bet you're sorry you didn't draft me." And I said, "Well, I wasn't employed then."
Yeah.
He said, "Really? You're not? I thought you were the general manager." I said, "You're confusing me with Joe Axelson."
Ouch.
I'm not real happy, Carl. If I was a little bigger, we might be rolling around here in the locker room.
If you were a little bigger, you'd be Joe Axelson. There you go. Yeah.
But I said, man, at least blame me for the crap I've done wrong. I mean, not for something I didn't.
I didn't think you were ever going to get over that.
I tried to get him. I was at the Woodlake Inn or whatever it was in those days, and I'm yelling Karl Malone, and I didn't even really know. Nobody knew in those days. Who knew who Karl Malone was? Yeah. He's like, oh, he's a power forward at Louisiana. He's got this and this. And well, he's better than Joe Klein. I know that. Yeah. That's all I know. So, and I'm yelling Karl Malone, but they didn't listen to me.
Well, even if it had taken, and
I know they had Otis Thorpe. So
that was the excuse, and that's a pretty good excuse to some level, except that. They're both neither could play center. Well, actually, both could.
Yeah, you could have played them both. But you could have had a pretty awesome front line right there. Yeah, with Eddie Johnson as the forward.
Yeah, and right behind him, of course, Chris Mullen and Detlef Schrempf were pretty good players that were available. So, but then again, in front of him was Benoit Benjamin and William Bedford.
Yeah,
and John Koncak. All those guys went in front of him.
Koncak was right in front of him. Right exactly. Yeah.
So you had
the big white stiff.
I mean, that was the day. Well, you got to draft a center. You got to draft.
It all starts there.
Jerry, how many times in those days did they draft you? They didn't see him. I mean, there's maybe video, maybe not. They didn't. I mean, they had scouts who go see.
It was 1920.
It was 1920. It was 1931.
It's not like they didn't see him.
No, I mean, come on with that. They took Joe Klein if you'd seen him.
Well, I honestly, I think I'd like to agree with you on this because it's even worse because they had more camps and things then they do now. And the guys played 3 and 4 years. They played 4 years in college, so you saw them if you wanted to see them. Yeah. And Joe was on the Olympic team and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good Olympic team too.
Well, I always remember John Thompson saying, "Well, he's the second best center in the draft, next to Ewing." It's like, well, big gap there.
Yeah.
I know. Well, and Koncak was, was drafted before him, so then somebody didn't agree that Koncak.
Well, I always say, people always say, well, yeah, boy, the Kings, yes, they did. So did the number one. Ewing wasn't as good as Karl Malone either, if you really get down to it. And number 2 pick was Wayman Tisdale. So you just go on down.
Well, consolation, I take Patrick Ewing over Joe Klein, though. I mean, consolation. Well, if I'm not getting the number 1, I'll take Patrick Ewing.
Yeah, you guys ended up trading Joe Klein for Wayman Tisdale, right? I mean,
no.
Oh, no, that's right, because that was Indiana and Boston.
That was LaSalle.
It was the same time.
That was LaSalle Thompson.
Tank Thompson. Right. Now, there's a center right there.
He was a good center. Tank was, and Wayman was a very good player. Yeah. That's one of those things that was fair, and both teams got what they needed, and it didn't make either one of them very good. But
yeah, I'm sorry. I conflated those because it was about the same time, right? Wasn't it when you got Wayman and then you got Danny Ainge?
No. Wayman came. Danny came. I think a year later.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's about the same time. Give yourself a break. Don't beat yourself up. Come on.
Roughly.
Oh man, tough show.
Same era of Kings basketball.
I'll tell you.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay. Let's continue here with Old Fashioned 3 A to Z. By the way, good news on the T-shirt as we're continuing.
T-shirt.
Yeah, Jerry. Last week I told you Jerry wasn't crazy about the design, but we've redone it, and I mean nothing's set in stone yet, but. Generally,
I like it. I like it. I mean, the creativity you've shown just boggles my mind.
Why can't he do it during the show?
And
that's what I'm saying.
Well, I mean,
there's
so much mind-boggling we can take,
All right.
There is a limit on mind-boggling.
Thank you. So maybe we'll have some word on that soon. So Old Fashioned 3 A to Z, all the way today to the letter. Stones, what letter? S.
Oh.
S.
Well, before I start, I want to mention something to Jerry that I don't know you saw. I think it was yesterday. Our guy was back on the floor, Jonathan Isaac.
Yes.
He returned to the floor. Orlando beat Boston. I don't think he was the reason, but he did return to the floor for like 2 years or something. It's crazy.
10 minutes, scored 8 points, I think.
We love that guy.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm keeping an eye on that guy.
If he stays healthy, well, you can't get him if he stays healthy. But
that's true. If he stays healthy, he's going to stay right there.
There.
Okay, for my S, I continue my run of guys who just get you buckets. I'm going back in time again to a guy who played in the ABA a couple years, came to the NBA, was All-NBA with 3 All-Star appearances in the NBA, 2 in the ABA, and ended up in the Hall of Fame. Charlie Scott is my S guy. He started off in New York City, grew up, then he transferred to a high school in North Carolina, became the first black scholarship athlete at North Carolina, which obviously is amazing. And then he had an All-American career, ended up, went to the ABA, drafted by the Celtics, but went to the ABA, Virginia Squires, which is a tremendous franchise. I love the Virginia Squires. I loved reading about him. He only played there 2 years.
Played with Doc, I think.
Yeah, Rookie of the Year, 27 points his first year, averaged 34.5 his second year, and that's the year they had the rookie, Julius Erving, who averaged 27. Didn't win Rookie of the Year, Julius Erving, in the ABA. Mr. Artis Gilmore won it that year. But so he played 2 years with Julius Erving. Then he took off to the NBA Celtics. George Gervin came in the next year to the Squires. So they had an amazing run of guys right there, like the Yardbirds, kind of with the guitarist, right, Jer? Anyway, so he comes over to Phoenix and plays a couple years, averages like 25, 26 points, eventually is traded from Phoenix to the Celtics, gets a ring with the Celtics.
Westphal.
Yeah, fantastic. So Charlie Scott, Hall of Famer. I ended his career in Denver, which is kind of, the Charlie Scott Nuggets jersey. You don't see a lot of those around. Yeah, but average, 20 points a game in his career, was in the Hall of Fame, and just a buckets guy. And the funny thing, he played in the NBA before the three-pointer, but he played in the ABA when they had it. He averaged like 25% a year the first 2 years, so just didn't have any idea on how to shoot it or anything like that. But I think if he would have been in a later generation, he would have learned that. A slasher, a scorer, just a tremendous offensive player. So Charlie Scott is my S guy.
Ooh, happy 4th of July. My goodness.
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, huh? Oh, I didn't know he had a cap on him now. Okay.
I think the shot clock expired.
Cut yours down to 90 seconds. That'd be a good idea once in a while.
We are the old-fashioned.
I know, we're old-fashioned. It means we take our time if we want to, okay? Come on. This guy's had a great career.
You mentioned the Squires because they had so many great players.
Yes.
Gervin, and not necessarily at the same time, and they still were never any good. And they made it the final year of the ABA when they had 7 teams. They just barely limped to the end of the season with cash calls, local businesses, and then they went out of business right before the merger.
Right before the
and
good
so
times.
they got nothing, no settlement, nothing. They just limped through the last
Rick
year.
Barry was on there at
when they were the Washington
beginning.
Capitals.
Yeah, their first year.
Because that was, I think it was the Oaks franchise.
Yeah.
Anyway, my S guy, you guys probably recognize him before I get to his actual name because his first 3 years in the league, he won championships.
Okay.
Point guard.
Sure.
Right? So his first name was Meyer. His actual name was Meyer Upton. His middle name Upton, but he went by
Meyer Upton.
Whitey Skoog.
Whitey
Skoog.
Great Whitey Skoog. I thought you guys could hear before I got there.
I got a jersey at home.
51, 52, 53 Minneapolis Lakers, and he'd shoot like 39%, like top 20 in the league.
He was in the three-point contest.
It was a different game then, and I think he played about 7 years and hurt his back and went into coaching. But I don't know much about him, except I've always loved the name Whitey Skoog. And some say that he, while he doesn't get credit for it, was one of the first guys, if not the first guy, to actually shoot a jump shot in competition. Now, I don't know
Some
anything
say
about that. Yeah. But Whitey, I just want to get that out there.
Glad I took a long time with Charlie Scott.
But Whitey Skoog, Jerry.
Yeah, well, sadly, I remember I didn't get to see him play in person.
Oh, that's too bad.
But
that's
I mean,
a shame.
I was a kid, but I knew who. Yeah. Of course, I always thought the better guard with him was Dick Garmaker.
Well, yeah. I mean,
everybody would know that.
Garmaker,
Dick Garmaker.
Garmaker and Skoog,
Wisconsin All-American. He could.
They were lawyers.
A little bigger, stronger.
Uh-huh.
But together they made a quite formidable backcourt.
Quite a backcourt. One of the original NBA Fantastic Twosomes.
That's right. Yeah. Curry and Thompson, look out.
Yeah. All right.
Garmaker
I'm glad you remember.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about who was there's a guy who shot the first jump shot or anything about that legend?
Well, the only one there's different opinions on it. I think Kenny Sailors out of Wyoming gets credit. Hank Lucetti running one. Those guys. Somebody did.
Just imagine the first time someone tried that in a game. Like, what do you?
Well, first of all, you call it a violation. That can't be legal.
That has got to be
I don't know I don't know what it is, but you did it, and we're going the other way.
Well, that's like so many things. Back in certainly in Indiana high school, things coaches were so rigid. Just shooting a jump shot off the dribble or something, or shooting anything off the dribble is like, my God. You'll go to hell for sure.
Come and sit next to me. Yeah. You'll be sitting next to me. Yeah.
I dribbled behind my back once, and it worked. But it's like, my God, I thought I'd
Mr. Showboat.
Bob Cousy over here.
Yeah,
Cousy.
Exactly
Hey, what's up, Cousy?
right. Well, blah, blah, blah.
That's not a team play, Mr. Caucasian comment.
I know it was. It actually was, but I always remember the coach said, blah blah blah. I said, well, take me out, see how you do.
That's the cool thing about
what a jerk.
I was.
You were a forerunner of today's player.
I was.
You really were.
I
Take me out,
was.
see how you do.
Yeah.
Load management. You'd have been all about load management.
That's the cool thing about Maravich. All the stuff he did that was ahead of his time, but it wasn't all for show. Some of it was like if you throw a pass behind your back, the defense doesn't see it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh, what's that? Get mustard on the hot dog. But no, it's just if you can do it, it's just a more efficient way, dribbling behind the back.
Oh, yeah. Oh, he was. I've said this 1,000 times, and I certainly witnessed a lot of his game in practice and live. But, always thing that amazed me about him was his underhanded 60-foot passes.
Right on the money to Doc.
To hurt to anybody. But it was easier for Doc.
Yeah.
But just boom. Just like that. It's like, are you kidding me?
He must have spent a lot of time in the gym, Jer.
I think
master all those things.
He visualized it, then he just went out and did it.
It's a bit like Jason Williams, when he's with the Kings. I'd always just love watching him practice because, the stuff he did that worked, and of course the stuff he didn't do was fun too. And then he'd spend, a lot of times after practice on behind the back, off the walls and different things. Full speed. Jay Will had the best handle of any. He was better than Pete, really. He wasn't as good a player, but he could do everything Pete could do and do it faster because he was quicker and faster.
Wow.
But
hello.
And you see you see those highlights of Jay Will. It's just breathtaking. It's amazing how many young players have already forgotten what a dynamic ball handler he was.
There really isn't a word to describe the way he handled the ball.
No, there really. Well, you'd come up with one, but it won't be
would
right.
be
You
right.
said dynamic. That's true,
Yeah.
but it's like, but that doesn't do it justice. Yeah.
I thought it did. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
I felt he did. I don't
Did
know.
you
I was
think
going to
that?
say, I was
I
thinking to
thought
myself, hey, Jerry really nailed that one.
It's just beyond description, really. Is all
No,
I'm
he
trying
actually
to say.
described it
Yeah.
pretty well.
I described it. I said
he did,
dynamic.
Yeah, he did that.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
I think
thought
about Pete, though,
more
was
than
he like
dynamic.
6'5"? So
Maybe even 6'6".
Yeah, so I mean,
I was going to say he
tougher
was
to
a big,
get everything going together. Yeah.
Oh, and could run like a deer.
He's like Wembanyama. Every time Jerry talks about him, he's taller. He was 6'9".
Wow, man. Shots fired on Jerry.
I'm kidding. I love pistol. I love pistol.
You said he was dynamic. That was good enough for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Hey, take him out. See how good you do. Okay. Yeah.
I don't want to.
No, exactly. That's what his coach said.
Here's the cherry on top. Your letter S.
Like my letter S is a well-known player from yesteryear, but I think I just kind of like talking about him, John Stockton.
You do like talking about John Stockton. Yes, you do.
For some different reasons. Basically, he's a Hall of Famer, first ballot, should be. Played many-time All-Star, Dream Teamer. He and Malone, the Stockton-Malone thing's a thing of legacy. I suppose you appreciate legacy. I don't know.
You describe it all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But anyway.
Yeah, I think so.
But the thing that I remember being, older, coming into the league, and the starting point guard for Utah was Ricky Green.
He was good.
And he was very good.
He was fast.
Former Michigan player and Vincennes University player, junior college.
Okay. Did not know that.
Let's see. Well,
Very
I'll try
good.
to help you.
You try to educate.
And so anyway, Ricky had made an all-star team, and I remember at that time, Frank Layden was telling Jerry Sloan, and Jerry Sloan said, we we got a guard here that's better than he is, John Stockton. And, you know, it's one of those deals you think, what? Yeah, come on. And then pretty soon they traded, I think they traded Ricky the next year. And then, of course, John took over, but it was his third year before everybody knew. It's like, wow, you know, this guy is terrific. And then, you know, so, and I always say that's the thing where, you know, patience is a virtue.
Yeah. But Jerry knew all along.
But the people that you know, it's a little bit like Danny Ainge talking about. Steve Nash, the same kind of thing. You know, the when you're up there close and personal with them, you know, even behind the scenes, you see things that, you know, that may not be, the timing may not be right for him.
Huge hands, right?
Huge hands. You know, it'd stop. Guys try to steal it, and he'd just catch a ball on in his hand. Now, big suction cups, you know. And he was tough. Dirty, really, at times.
He was ornery.
Ornery,
yeah.
Well, one of those guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but you talk about how important it is to have guys who need to win.
Yes.
Because I used to coach a young lady who went on to, she was working at Gonzaga, and she was up there. This was probably 7 summers ago, whatever it was. And so, you know, up at Gonzaga. And John Stockton was there because he still has quite a presence there. And so they got involved in like a pickup volleyball game. And the word is like John Stockton's like he wanted to win. You know, some pickup volleyball, but that's just, you don't turn that off.
No.
That competitiveness.
No.
So you take that the highest level. It's like he had to win.
Yeah, the great ones. I think that's what separates them. Or I've always heard Larry talking about, you know, everybody wants to win. So you know, what you're looking for is guys who need to win.
They got to win. They have to win.
Everyone would prefer to win,
sure,
but that's not enough.
Yeah, you know, because you hear fans say, they don't want to win. Of course they do. They don't maybe want it to the level that you wish they did, or in some cases they may have that drive. They're just not good enough. You know, just not good enough. I always remember Greg Lucaville one time telling me about LaSalle Thompson. I've told this story before. He was like, you know, if you'd get him motivated, he's better than Kareem. I said, no, he's not.
Kareem who?
No, I said
Kareem Hardison?
I said LaSalle Thompson is motivated. I mean, the guy plays hard, competitive every night.
Yeah.
He does. He does what he does. I said, I think most nights he plays harder than Kareem. But he's not nearly as good. You know, sometimes, you know, it's the smart butt sitting back in the history class that's getting A's and not work, and then some guy busting his hump getting a C. Well, it's easy for one. It's not so easy for the other.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to sit them down. Greg, let me explain this to you. Sometimes you don't know what's going on. Let me tell you how it is.
Yeah, Greg. You're great at building buildings and doing all this
Patching
stuff.
up the roofs. Yeah, going up there on the catwalk.
Well, he was. He's an amazing man. I mean, but
there should be a statue of him, I think.
There should be.
And it should be up on the roof. Yeah.
There should be.
Because it doesn't happen without him at a time when people are like, what?
Probably the most important single person, I think, and maybe in professional sports history in Sacramento.
I would agree.
Because he was the starter.
Well, number one.
Other than Phantom,
yeah. Because I was there too. I mean, come on, not just him. I was
you
there
and Greg,
too.
You and
Me and Greg were there, and then we welcomed you in later.
Yeah,
you can be the third part of the trifecta.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, Whitey's not.
No, he's not.
No way. Yeah, you're right.
He's a
no question.
Bay Area kid.
I'm not dynamic enough.
Yeah. Hey, he described it pretty well right there. Yeah, I knew exactly what you meant.
Wouldn't we like people to, if they have any questions or comments, to let us know?
I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe
you got the numbers there, the email. Right?
Oh, there's a number.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, questions for Phantom, Jerry, or
I doubt it.
Probably just
feel free to ask me and Phantom. You don't.
Yeah.
Come on.
Questions for the guys and Whitey. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next time on the Old Fashioned 3.
Thank you for joining the Old Fashioned 3 on Stones Radio Networks. To stay updated on the show, like and subscribe on YouTube, and all shows are available for download on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts, and of course at stonesradionetworks.com. Follow the show and the gents on Twitter at OL, Fashioned, and the number 3, at Phantom Radio 60, and at Whitey Gleason. This has been a production of Stones Radio Networks.